Butty Boy is The Reluctant Fell Runner, Season 2, Episode 4. A Perfect Day at Smarting Bottom. Somewhere in deepest, darkest Cumbria, well, actually it was a crisp, clear day, the four intrepid fell runners, JB, Camo, Yorkshire and Three Coats were out for a run around the orange peel horseshoe. Three Coats was driving the lead car with Yorkshire as passenger, and Camo was trailing behind with JB as passenger. Three Coats turned into the Grand National Trust car park. He had a yellow pass for the year. Camo screeched into the car park and raced around to the signpost that showed the charges. He peered through the window and read down the different rates for the different length of stays.
£4.50? He shouted. No bloody chance I'm paying that.
Yorkshire was out of Three Coats' car already and was bending up and down to stretch his legs after the journey. He looked surprised when Camo screeched past him and out of the car park. JB gave him a little wave as they passed.
I'll find us a free spot, don't you worry,
said Camo. He raced down the road and screeched to a slow pace as there was a little turn off left.
Here we go, told you,
he said happily. Camo turned in left onto a narrow farm track. The more he followed the track down, the higher the banking became either side. It led straight to a wooden farm gate.
Dagnammit!
Hitting the steering wheel hard with his hand.
Can't leave it here. The farmer will drag me car out with his tractor, or he'll just push it onto his field.
JB kept his eyes focused forward and did not speak, sensing Camo's anger and frustration was rising. Camo put the car in reverse and looked over his shoulder without a word to JB. The next moment they were zooming back up the track at speed, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Back on the road, Camo drove slowly, looking left and right for a place.
Come on, he said to himself. There's always a place somewhere.
A car had come up behind them and had to slow down to their pace. It edged out sideways to see ahead to overtake, but the road was bendy and they could not risk it. The road came out to a straight section and the car zoomed past, beeping. Beep, 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 beep.
Sod off!
Shouted Camo, jabbing two fingers up at the back of the car. They were getting further and further from the car park where Three Coats and Yorkshire were waiting for them. Camo was getting more and more embarrassed and agitated. JB had some spare change, but he did not feel the moment was right to mention it. They were now a good little run from the other two.
Bloody have to pay for it,
said Camo.
Bloody robbers!
Camo hit the accelerator and JB was pushed back into his seat. To add to Camo's frustration, he eventually found a place to turn the car around at a long, free lay-by, but it was much too long a run back to Yorkshire and Three Coats to park there. There was silence as he turned the wheel hard and fast, throwing the car around. They shot off back down the road, Camo still looking in vain for a free spot. The Grand National Trust car park was coming up, with Three Coats and Yorkshire out of their car, waiting. There was a car coming towards them on the opposite side of the road, and Camo had to wait for it to pass. He was tapping the steering wheel with pent-up frustration. He's going to pop in a minute at something, thought JB.
Hang on a minute,
said Camo.
I think I can get on there, behind the car park sign.
JB looked at the narrow space behind the car park sign. It looked very narrow, but he didn't say anything. After the car had passed, Camo turned to go into the car park and then made a sharp left to mount the little curb. Yorkshire thought he was crashing and threw his hands up to his eyes. Once he was up the curb, Camo stopped the car to check if it would fit.
"I think you'd better get out,"
he said to JB.
"I'll squeeze in close to the back of the sign on your side."
JB grabbed his stuff and opened the door. "Do you want me to watch you in?" he said. Camo shot him a look of anger.
"No,"
he said with finality. JB shut the door and walked over to Yorkshire and Three Coats.
What's he doing?"
said Yorkshire absent-mindedly. It was a rhetorical question, as all three of them knew what he was doing. There was a little banking up to the sign, and Camo had to rev the engine to get up it, but then brake so that he would not smash into a low wall once up. All three of them grimaced at the revving noise and braced for what was going to happen. "If he has to reverse down and come in the car park and pay, then I'd keep out of his way for a bit," said JB.
"No doubt,"
said Yorkshire. Camo eventually got the car into position. His door would not fully open, and he had to squeeze and contort his giant frame to get out, and then turn and do the same to pull his rucksack out. He came walking across to them smiling, pleased with himself. He clicked the button of his key fob nonchalantly over his shoulder, and without looking back locked all the doors.
"Hi chaps,"
he said proudly.
"More money saved."
Said Three Coats.
"Well, we all have to wait."
Camo's happiness disappeared, and JB and Yorkshire wondered if he was going to blow. But his happiness at the free parking spot must have just won the moment.
"You should get one of these yellow parking permits,"
said Three Coats.
"Oh yeah?"
said Camo.
"How much?"
£62,
said Three Coats.
62 quid? You've been ripped off there, mate,"
said Camo, getting back at him.
"I haven't,"
bristled Three Coats.
"A few trips out and these car park charges would soon go over that."
"Not if you get free spots,"
said Camo, looking back at his car proudly.
And what about all the wasted petrol? And all the wasted time trying to find your free spots?"
said Three Coats. Camo went to say something, but nothing came out, so he quietly fumed instead. "Anyway," said JB, changing the subject, "should be a good orange peel horseshoe round today. Looks clear weather for it. We might even get some views on the tops for a change."
"Yes,"
said Yorkshire.
"And Three Coats has some news, haven't you, Three Coats?"
"Yeah?" said JB. Camo was still quietly fuming and didn't ask.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit nervous about it, actually,"
said Three Coats. "What is it?" said JB.
"He's going to try for the Norbert,"
said Yorkshire quickly. "Yeah?" said JB, smiling at Three Coats.
"I was going to tell them,"
said Three Coats.
"Sorry,"
said Yorkshire.
I just couldn't wait."
"That's great," said JB. "It's your turn to have a go, Three Coats."
I want to do it the old-fashioned way,"
said Three Coats.
Do the full fell running season that builds up to it, including the big three. First the Fat Wife, then the Windy Bog Trot, and then the big one, the Hellsman. And if I've done them all right there, then I'll go for it."
"Oh, sounds like a good plan," said JB. "And it'll give us something to focus on for the year. What do you say, Camo?"
"Good luck,"
he said, still annoyed about the crack over his parking.
"You're gonna need it."
As always happened, suddenly they were on the move. They set off at a trot and headed straight for the first steep ascent. JB looked back at the car park. It was a big, almost empty car park, with just the one car in it, Three Coats' car, and then perched precariously and sticking out like a sore thumb was Camo's big white Qashqai, jammed in behind the car park sign just off the road. JB could not make his mind up if it looked more like an abandoned car from Teenage Joyriders, or one of those cars jacked up prominently to advertise a car lot in an American film. Camo was at the front, going off at a fast pace with his pent-up aggression.
"Steady on, Camo, my friend," said Yorkshire. "We've got a long way to go yet." "Yeah," said Three Coats. "Steady on."
Camo stopped and looked down at them.
If you're going to do the Norbert, you're going to have to step up your training. We might as well start now. If you can't do this little 14-miler, you've no chance on the Norbert."
Three Coats gritted his teeth and soldiered on up the slope. "I think we're all going to suffer now on this one," thought JB, pushing to keep up. 3.5 hours later, they were coming back towards the car park, covered in sweat and with leg muscles singing. The car park was nearly full now with hikers, and Camo's car stuck out incongruously. Over the hard run round, Camo's mood had risen, just as Three Coats had fallen.
"Oh, that was brilliant,"
said Camo.
"I really enjoyed that."
Said Three Coats.
"You really pushed the pace on that one, and you chose the steepest routes."
"Good training for your Norbert, that,"
said Camo.
"He's right, Three Coats,"
said Yorkshire, bent over with his hands on both knees, breathing hard.
"Unfortunately."
I've been thinking," said JB.
"Here we go,"
said Three Coats sarcastically. "Hey, this is for your benefit," said JB.
"A likely story, I'm sure,"
said Three Coats. "Steady on, I've not even said it yet," laughed JB.
Sorry,"
said Three Coats.
"I'm just a bit tired. It's something my granddad used to say."
"Right, well, I was thinking on the way round, the next fell run on the calendar is the famous fair at Smarting Bottom. I know it's a long trek out, but we've always said we'd like to do it one day."
"Oh, that's a long way,"
said Camo, sucking between his teeth.
"Be at least a couple of hours to get there. It'll be busy and all on that road in. And if you get stuck in tourist traffic, it will be a nightmare."
Said Yorkshire, pondering.
"The famous Smarting Bottom, eh? Were you thinking of camping overnight?"
Well, we don't have to," said JB. "I was thinking more of going early in the morning to miss all the traffic and save ourselves getting all tied up. We could spend all day there at the fair and fell race and then just make our way back home after, whenever we feel like it, and how the traffic is looking. We might as well make the day of it if we're only going to do a Smarting Bottom once. Then we can tick it off and we don't have to go again, or if it's as good as they say it is, we'll be happy to go back anyway."
"Ooh, to get a Smarting Bottom under your belt at least once must be on everyone's bucket list,"
said Camo.
"But I've heard they whip up the prices for the event. You know, on the food and the drink. It costs you a packet. Once you're there, they've got you all tied up for the day."
"Well, just take your own food then," said JB. Camo was pricing it all up in his mind.
You know what?"
said Yorkshire.
"Let's do it. A Smarting Bottom has been right up there on my wish list. I'd like to get one while I'm young and fit enough to enjoy it thoroughly." "I'll do it then,"
sighed Three Coats.
If it can be a day trip, then I won't upset my wife with an overnighter. She wouldn't be so keen if I told her I was staying out all night just to get a smarting bottom for the first time.
Camo, said JB. I'll drive on this one. It's got to be my turn.
You're on,
said Camo.
If we set off at 5, we can be there about 7. I'll bring my stove and kettle. We can have a few coffees and some bacon baps and have a mooch about before it gets too busy.
Sounds good to me, said JB. Yorkshire and Three Coats looked at each other.
We'll see you there about 10:30,
said Yorkshire.
That should be plenty of time. The race doesn't start till 1.
Yeah,
agreed Three Coats.
About 10:30. I need my beauty sleep, me.
Yes, you do, Three Coats, laughed JB.
Eh, what?
He said.
Ooh, so we are all off to smarting bottom then,
said Yorkshire, rubbing his hands together.
It's got the reputation of being one of the oldest, prettiest and most iconic fell races of them all. I can't wait to see what all the fuss is all about.
And one of the steepest,
said Camo.
Yes, that's right. What did they say? If you want a thorough thrashing, go to smarting bottom,
said Yorkshire.
That's right,
said Camo.
Ooh, can't wait for it.
A perfect day at Smarting Bottom. JB arrived at Camo's house at exactly 5 o'clock in the morning. At first he thought the house was in total darkness and wondered if he should knock or text Camo, but through the little frosted panel in the front door he could see a light coming from the kitchen at the back. He gently tapped on the glass 3 times so that he did not wake Camo's wife and kids. He saw Camo's giant frame blot out the kitchen light as he came towards the door.
I'll be out in a second, buddy,
he said, yawning. JB got in the car and waited. After a few minutes, Camo came out with his running rucksack in one hand and a big plastic carrier bag in the other. Camo put the big bag in the back seat and got in the front with his rucksack and put it between his knees.
Got us some nice bacon for Baps when we get there,
said Camo. Great, said JB. JB turned on the sat-nav. He had already programmed it for smarting bottom, but had not switched it on because to go to Camo's was in the opposite direction and the sat-nav would have protested all the way. The sat-nav said the journey would be 2 hours and 3 minutes.
What's this?
said Camo.
What's that noise?
It's the sat-nav. I've not had it long. It's a great little sat-nav for directions and it was really cheap, said JB. The only problem is I got it second-hand off a Polish guy and the voice is in Polish. I've not figured out how to change it yet.
Want me to give it a go?
said Camo, leaning forward and yawning, about to press the buttons. Better not mess with it, Camo, or we might not get there, said JB. But I'll figure it out at home another time.
Fair enough,
said Camo. They set off for the distant village. JB wondered what they would talk about for 2 hours at that time of the morning, but in a few minutes Camo was fast asleep. His mouth dropped open and his head kept nodding down, waking him for a split second, and then he was off again. Occasionally he snored. JB had the gradually rising sunrise to keep him company, and the directions from a very strict-sounding Polish guy. He just followed the screen diagrams, but the repeated Polish words seemed to settle in the back of his mind in a strange way. He got used to some of the words, but could not connect them to the diagrams.
Is this guy just making up words?
He thought to himself. As he approached an important roundabout, the strict Polish guy issued his orders.
Versner Snives, Scredge level, Scredge level.
What on earth does Scredge level mean? Thought JB. On this roundabout we have to go straight ahead. But I'm sure he said exactly the same thing on the last roundabout when we had to take the first exit left. Camo was no company on the journey. He woke up literally as they passed the white oblong village sign with the black writing announcing they were entering Smarting Bottom.
"Oh, that was quicker than I thought,"
said Camo.
"So, your Polish sat-nav got us here all right then?"
"Yeah, it's not bad actually," said JB.
"Have you learnt any Polish then?"
said Camo. "A bit," said JB.
"Scredge level." "What's that mean then?"
said Camo. "Absolutely no idea," said JB.
"Oh, all we need to do now is find a parking space,"
said Camo, suddenly looking agitated. "Hopefully that's sorted," said JB. "I texted the veteran telling him we were coming here. He's been a few times and he told me about a couple of places, so we might get lucky." The road they were on had large detached houses on the right-hand side and a little wood a little bit lower down on the left. The houses were expensive looking with large windows and long low roofs. Each of the houses sat comfortably in their well-maintained gardens.
"These houses are nice,"
said Camo.
"I wouldn't mind one of them."
The road was going slightly uphill, and then they were over the bump of the hill and the view opened out. "Wow," said JB. "Now that's a village."
"Would you look at that?"
said Camo. There was a beautiful old English stone village with a green cricket pitch set perfectly against a backdrop of bracken and grass-covered fells. It was like the fells were a hand gently cupping the village, and the village sat as comfy there as an egg in a bird's nest. "You couldn't imagine anything more perfect," said JB. They drove slowly down into the village, and JB looked for the spot the veteran had described. At the top end of the village was a little campsite, and the back of that was supposed to be a spot that would fit 3 cars. It was just as the veteran had described, and JB backed onto it.
"What?"
said Camo.
"You can park here for free all day?"
"Apparently so," said JB. Immediately behind the car was the campsite, then the cricket pitch and village green in front of the little village. They both got out of the car and stretched and looked about. The morning air was fresh and crisp. You could feel the warmth of the summer day beginning to build. It was the perfect English day that is so rare, yet everyone knows. That day that you breathe in deep to fill your lungs, and with the heat and the bright light, it burns off the fog of that heavy grey feeling of winter that had built up after all those long, dark and grim days. It was one of those days that warmed your soul. There were 1 or 2 people stirring in the campsite. "We're a bit early, I suppose," said JB.
"Fancy a walk?"
said Camo. Yeah, sure," said JB, surprised. They set off walking through the little campsite. Everyone was relaxed, and there were bits of noise and quiet activity, everyone deciding not to break through the perfection of the day. People nodded as they walked past, or said simply, "Morning." "Morning." He remembered Carrie Fisher, the actress who played Princess Leia in Star Wars, saying in an interview once how she knew how depressed she was when she threw back the curtains in the morning in her California home with the sun pouring in, and she was thinking, "Oh God, not another bloody day in paradise." It seemed impossible to get that feeling from a day such as this. They came out of the campsite and wandered down a little tarmac road between 2 dry stone walls, and then off to a warm path under tall trees and beside a trickling stream. It was cooler under the trees and by the stream. For a section the ground had been worn back and the tree roots exposed. They were strong and dark, and JB had to carefully pick his way through so as not to trip up, and then it was easier walking again.
"Should be a good day for it,"
said JB.
Yeah,
said Camo.
let's not speak, eh?
JB smiled, understanding, and they walked on, almost as if each other was not present. Eventually they came to a stop by a farm gate that looked across the valley. The sky seemed enormous, and seemed to shrink the mountains a little compared to normal, when the sky was low or half covering them. They stood by the gate looking up at the mountains and the clear blue sky. The mountains looked so friendly and welcoming. It seemed impossible to imagine them covered in cloud, whipped by the wind and lashed by the rain, and them being their usual foreboding and ominous selves. A few times the feeling of having to rush about, must do something, tried to start, and JB let it dissipate away. Why would anyone want to be anywhere else, doing anything else? He thought. Eventually Camo moved first.
Right,
he said, his voice a little thick and far off.
Better go back, I suppose.
The pair of them walked back, still not speaking. Back at the campsite it was more lively when they arrived. There were more people up and about than when they had set off. Everyone was chirpy, like the morning bird song. It was, apart from the weather, like one of those days just before Christmas, where you go into town and everyone is smiling and friendly, and the usual English reserve temporarily put aside. The back of JB's car backed onto the campsite, so you were almost part of it. He had brought a pair of camp chairs just in case, and he set them up. Camo got his camp stove out, and in his ex-army efficient manner, it was not long before they were both sat there, with a mug of steaming coffee, and a big bacon bap in their hands. "What a day," said JB.
Yeah,
said Camo, simply, in a far-off voice. There was no hurry to do anything, and a couple of hours drifted by very pleasantly. Camo drank down the last of his third coffee, and shook the drips out onto the grass, and put the tin mug in his rucksack. JB's phone pinged, and reluctantly he checked it. "It's Yorkie. They're stuck in traffic and are running late."
I knew they should have set off earlier,
said Camo. They had a couple of hours to kill before the race, and had a wander around the village stalls at the fair. JB thought the stalls fell into three main types. There were the fast food stalls selling hot dogs, burgers, jacket potatoes, or sweet food stalls selling things like pancakes. The second type of stall was the tat stalls, multicoloured wristbands, crystals, knobbly, impractical pottery on the cusp of ugliness. The third type of stall was games. Throw a hoop to win a prize. Throw a dart. As they walked round, JB could smell a sickly, sweet, familiar smell.
"Oh, I know what that is,"
he said.
"What?"
said Camo.
"That's a candy floss stall. I've not seen one of those in years. Let's go take a look."
Sure enough, there was a small box on wheels. It was covered in stickers and had an open double-panelled glass front. The smell of cooking sugar was intense. The candy floss machine was spinning and working, and JB had a childhood flashback to being at the fairground as a child and that intense nervous excitement.
"Oh, that's fantastic," said JB. "I'm so pleased they're still going. And look, they've even got toffee apples and those giant red cat face lollies. They're lethal, them. God, I can remember eating them, getting your face all sticky and your tongue sore, and then you can't resist biting into it, and then you get them great big shards in your mouth like big pieces of glass. You have to be careful not to lacerate your tongue. Oh, it'd be lethal if you swallowed it." "Are you going to get some candy floss then?" said Camo. "Oh, good God, no. They're disgusting," said JB. Why did you say you were pleased they were here then? Said Camo.
Well, it's tradition, isn't it? Said JB. It's nice that traditions carry on.
Well, I'm getting one,
said Camo.
I love candy floss, me. You're kidding,
said JB.
I am,
he said. Camo joined the queue and came back with a giant purple candy floss, a toffee apple, and a big red flat round cat's face, wrapped in that crinkly thick plastic and tied with little ribbons.
You're not going to eat that lot, are you?
Said JB.
No, the toffee apple and the lolly are for the kids. I'll put them in the car when we change.
Camo sank his face into the candy floss to get a bite.
Oh, delicious,
he said, munching away.
Ugh.
JB curled up his face at the sight and smell of it.
Want some?
Said Camo, holding it out to JB. Oh, go on then, he said. Just a tiny bit, just for the memory of it. JB took a tiny pinch near the bottom, away from where Camo had taken a bite. It came away in that strange way, a bit like pulling at the fibres of cotton wool. The part he touched tightened up and became more solid. JB looked at it for a moment before taking a taste.
Ugh! Did I really used to eat this?
He thought. He went to take a bite, and it half disappeared in his mouth, the strands of sugar hitting his tongue and tightening and pinching it. He had forgotten it did that, and he was instantly transported back to being at the fairground as a child, with the intense feeling you had back then. It was shocking how strong your feelings were when you were younger compared to now. It was like you were the same person, but also a different one, you and not you, all at the same time. Then the sugar rush hit and made him lightheaded.
Oh!
He said, automatically opening his mouth to get rid of the taste and shaking his head to get rid of the sugar high.
Oh my God, that's disgusting. Ha 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 ha!
Camo laughed a deep laugh.
Ha ha ha!
You couldn't pay me to eat all that, said JB. Said Camo, burying his face into it and showing it off to JB. They wandered round, and the fair spilled out into the village green, where there were a number of game stalls. There was a penalty shootout with an unfit, podgy teacher in goal, struggling to keep out the pupils shooting footballs at him. One of the most popular events was a throw a wet sponge at the teacher. On the village green was what looked like an actual set of medieval stocks that would have been used for the villagers to dish out their form of punishment back in the day. In the stocks was an older, mustachioed male teacher. He was a popular victim with a group of teenagers. The sign advertised 50p a throw, or 3 throws for £1. A boy came up for a turn.
Come on, Graham, give it your best shot, son,
shouted the teacher.
You've no chance from there, you.
The boy was a little wound up and tried to throw too hard, and it missed. It is hard to adjust to throwing something wet that crumbles as you try to throw it, and he ended up getting sprayed a little himself.
Ha ha! Useless!
shouted the teacher.
You always were rubbish at PE, Graham. You throw like a big girl.
The boy fumed and searched in his pocket for another 50p. A girl stepped forward.
Not you, Sally,
joked the teacher.
What have I ever done to you?
The girl took her time and did a careful underarm throw. It hit him plumb in the face with a gentle splosh.
That's more like it. Well done, Sally. Give that Graham lessons, will you?
shouted the teacher. Graham quietly fumed, not being able to find another 50p. A boy worked his way through to the front.
Oh no, it's lazy boy Fraser,
shouted the teacher. JB didn't know whether he was just being a pain or whether he was trying to drum up business for the charity event.
Are you sure you've got the energy for this, Fraser? Do you not need a lie down?
We'll see, Meadows, said the lad.
Mr. Meadows, to you,
said the teacher.
Right you are, Mr. Meadows. This is for all that homework you gave us and all those detentions, he said. Go on, Fraser, get him back, said one of the group.
Go on, Fraser, get him back. Don't stand for that, he's always had it in for you.
Fraser smiled and held up a £5 note.
Fill up a fresh bucket, please,
he said. The group of teenagers cheered.
Hey, he's got a £5. God blimey, Fraser, how many goes are you going to have?
Said Mr. Meadows, a little less confidently.
It's for charity, isn't it, sir? So I'll pay a £5 for just the one shot, he said.
Are you sure? That's very good of you, Fraser. Give it your best shot then, lad,
said Mr. Meadows, surprised.
Will do,
said Fraser. Fraser picked up the bucket and walked towards him, setting the stocks.
Hey, no coming closer, that's cheating, said Meadows. There's a line you have to be behind.
Oh, come on now, sir, it's for charity. Be a good sport,
said Fraser.
Fraser, don't you dare,
said Meadows. Fraser walked forward and slowly tipped the bucket of water over Mr. Meadows' head. It ran over his face and ran off the edge of his moustache, with the teacher shaking his head. The teenagers hollered and yelped with delight.
Well done, Fraser! Look at Meadows, everyone! Look at Meadows!
Oh, that's cold,
said Mr. Meadows, spluttering and shivering. After the bucket was empty, Fraser kindly wiped the teacher's face with the sponge.
Why, thank you, Fraser, and thanks for the £5 for charity. These stocks are not locked, I could have just got out, you know.
You're a good sport, sir,
said Fraser.
Thank you, Fraser. But I'll still be seeing you in school on Monday,
said Meadows.
I don't doubt, sir,
said Fraser.
I don't doubt.
Fraser walked back to a hero's reception, and a little group of them walked off with him discussing it.
Oh, I would have loved to have done that to a few teachers back in the day,
said Camo.
He's right up my street, that lad is.
They carried on walking round and found a stall run by the Scouts that had a big crowd.
What's going on here?
said Camo. The sign says one-armed bandit, 50p a go. But where's the slot machine? said JB. There were 3 young scouts sat on 3 chairs with big brown farm sacks in front of them.
Roll up, roll up, roll up. Who's next for the one-armed bandit?
shouted the scoutmaster. A little young girl stepped forward out of the expectant crowd and handed over her 50p.
Oh, hello,
said the scoutmaster.
What's your name?
The little girl bent and looked up shyly and whispered cutely,
Jemima. Oh,
said the crowd.
Are you ready to play the slot machine, Jemima?
She nodded shyly.
Oh,
said the crowd.
Well, pull the handle then,
said the scoutmaster. The little girl stepped forward to a broom handle set into a box by the side of the third boy and pulled it down. The scoutmaster made the noise of the handle going down. The 3 happy boys all acted as one They threw themselves back in their chairs with their arms high, and then diving into their bags, rolling their hands around, searching inside, while making the noise of the one-armed bandit machine. The boy in charge on the furthest left nodded and got a nod back from the other two. The first boy pulled out and held up a tin can. "Ka-ching beans!" shouted the first one. "Ka-ching peas!" shouted the second one.
"Ka-ching pear slices!"
said the third. "Oh!" sighed the crowd, disappointed for the little girl. The scoutmaster leaned forward to her and gave her a little lollipop. The girl took the lollipop, and the crowd cooed and awed and made happy noises.
"Was that fun?"
said the scoutmaster. The little girl nodded shyly and then ran back to her mother.
"Who wants to go at the one-armed bandit? Roll up, roll up, roll up!" shouted the scoutmaster. "Who's next for the one-armed bandit? Roll up, roll up, roll up for the one-armed bandit!"
The three boys all chatted quietly while they waited for the next punter.
"Oh, that's ace!" said Camo. "I've never seen it done like that before."
They stayed watching, fascinated by the performance of the three boys. They did it really well.
"I want to see what they do when it's a win,"
said JB.
"Oh yeah, that's what I'm waiting for,"
said Camo. There was a young boy who had paid and pulled the arm. The three boys did their excellent routine. Boy on the far left nodded.
"Ka-ching tapioca!"
said the first.
"Ka-ching tapioca!"
said the second. Camo gripped JB's arm excitedly.
"Ka-ching tapioca!"
said the third. The three boys immediately stood up and did an impression of a slot machine paying out. The crowd cheered.
"Hooray!" Oh, that's brilliant!"
said Camo. They're doing it really well," said JB.
"That's absolutely great."
"Everyone's a winner!" announced the scoutmaster.
"Would you like to step forward and choose your prize, young man?"
The boy who had won stepped forward and chose a little pink teddy bear and walked over and gave it to the little girl who got the lolly when she lost. It was his little sister. This got the biggest awe and seal of approval of the day. The little boy was a bit embarrassed, but also thoroughly pleased with himself and the look of pleasure on his little sister's face. JB's phone went. It was Yorkshire.
"Hi, JB. We're on the outskirts of the village now. Shouldn't be too long. What a drag it's been stuck in all that traffic,"
he said.
"Should have set off earlier,"
shouted Camo in the background.
"What was that, JB?"
said Yorkshire. Nothing, Yorkshire," said JB. "You're cutting it fine to park up, change and register in time. We might have to just meet you at the start of the race, not before. Camo, where should we meet 'em?"
There's that big oak tree near where the start point is. Tell them we'll meet 'em there."
There's a big oak tree on the field. You can't miss it. We'll be waiting for you near there."
"OK, righto," said Yorkshire. "Big oak tree, three coats. Remember that. Right, we'll see you soon."
JB went to say bye, but he'd already gone.
"We might as well head back to the car and get changed,"
said Camo. On the way through the fair, they heard a familiar voice.
"Hi, Camo! Hi, Camo!"
It was Arcala with her troop of brownies and her ice cream stand.
"Camo! It's Arcala!" Camo! Hi, it's Arcala!
She shouted. JB looked at Camo. Camo, can't you hear Arcala shouting you?
I heard. Just keep going and pretend we haven't heard her. I'm stuffed after all this candy floss, and she'll only guilt trip me into buying one of them ice creams.
Just tell her you're full, said JB. Camo gave him a look.
Like that would work with Arcala,
he said. They walked away, JB feeling more guilty than Camo was. They had not gone far and they heard a little voice.
Excuse me, Mr. Camo.
They both turned around to find one of the brownies holding out a big ice cream to Camo. JB remembered her from the previous time. Lucinda. Lucinda started her prepared speech.
This is from Arcala. She said you must not have heard her shouting you, as you are probably getting ready for the race. She says, will you go and see her afterwards? You can pay her for it then.
Oh, bloody hell,
said Camo, taking the ice cream in his free hand and holding the half-eaten candy floss in the other. He means thank you very much, said JB. Lucinda was stood there staring at him with large open eyes.
Yeah?
Said Camo.
Do you have any message for me to take back to Arcala?
She said.
No,
said Camo. He means to say, tell Arcala thank you very much. She is very kind, and of course he will come and say hello after the race and pay for this lovely ice cream, said JB.
Yeah, that's what I said,
said Camo.
OK, bye,
said Lucinda.
Will you be able to remember all that?
Said Camo.
Yes, of course. Arcala says you don't have to shower first. She doesn't mind you being sweaty and smelly.
Oh, right,
said Camo. Lucinda toddled off. Now do you believe me? Said JB.
What?
Said Camo. That Arcala fancies you, he said.
Don't be daft,
said Camo.
She treats everyone the same.
Oh yeah, said JB. Well, where's my ice cream then? Camo looked down at his ice cream.
Oh yeah, you can have this one if you like.
No thanks, laughed JB. They walked to their car, with Camo taking the odd lick of the ice cream to stop it dripping.
I'm going to have to dish this. I can't face it,
said Camo. Well, just put it in the next bin then, said JB.
What? And risk Arcala finding out? No chance. I'll wait until we get back to the car. By then I'll know if we're being followed or not,
he said. Camo looked at the candy floss.
I'll put this in the first bin we see, though. I have to admit, after the first taste, it was all downhill from then. It's coated me mouth. I can't believe I used to love these as a kid.
Yeah, some things are just best left as memories, said JB.
You're dead right there,
said Camo. After changing and registering, they set off to be near the start area and the big oak tree they said they would meet Yorkshire and 3 Coats under. I always find it a bit unnerving in the registration when they ask about your next of kin, laughed JB.
Really?
Said Camo.
That doesn't bother me. I find it unnerving when they ask for the cash. You can't keep hold of the stuff. It goes through my fingers quicker than water does.
You're not wrong there, said JB. As they walked through the crowd of gathering runners, there were a group who were obviously Welsh, all wearing their club colours.
Whoa! Have you come all the way from Wales?
Said Camo.
Yes. We always make the annual trip here. We always look forward to a good smarting bottom sea boyo, he said.
It's a bit far for you, isn't it? Said JB.
Not really, he said. Not as far as you go for our lovely Welsh beaches, isn't it?
I suppose not, said JB.
So what's the name of your club then? Well now, for short it is Llanfair Pool Gwyn Gilgo Gerwn Queer Draw Bwl Randus Il Go 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 Harriers. Right then,
said Camo.
That's longer than some of the fell races I've been in. Well now, we're from North Wales, see? You come into our village, there's lovely, and we'll tar and feather you. In my grandmother's cafe, we serve all the locals first, and save all the burnt cakes for you English bastards, and we spit in your tea, see? Not that we bear any grudges, mind, no.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice,
said Camo.
What's your name like? I'm Daffyd Llewellyn Owens Thomas Roberts Edwards Williams Jones, he said.
David, said JB.
No, Daffyd, I say, you ignorant English bastard, said Daffyd.
Oh, nice, said JB.
Is it Daffyd with a Y or an I?
said Camo.
No, vowels is a godforsaken English invention, isn't it? You can take all those back with you if you don't mind,
he said.
It's Daffyd, spelt P-P-H-Y-L-L-F-Q-W-Y-L-L-L-K. Obviously C, isn't it?
Oh, right.
All right,
said Camo.
Anyway, Daffyd, we'd best be off. We're trying to meet up with a couple of mates of ours. We'll probably see you on the way round. Oh, not if I see you first, you English bastards. If I get the chance, see, I'll drown you in all the peat bogs, I will.
See ya, said JB.
Nice to meet you.
They went a little way off to stand a bit closer to the big oak tree where they said they would wait for Yorkshire and Three Coats. The tall Welsh runner turned to his group.
Just a minute from me, boyos, before we start. Gather round here, gather round. Come on in nice and tight together. Tighter, I say. That's it, boyos, there's lovely. Lads, 'tis a great privilege of mine to be standing here in front of you. It is a great honour for you to represent Wales on English soil here today. Think of your lovely homeland, the green valleys, and think where you are stood now. Some of you have come from the big cities, and some from the ancient farms of your families. But we all came together on the fells and the mountains of Wales. For me, this is one of the best groups of runners we've ever had. So today, we stand tall on this soil. We run like the wind. We give of our best, and today, if you have to leave behind your sweat and your piss on this ground beneath you, before we go over our Welsh mountains back home, then that's fine, but we'll not leave behind any tears. If you are feeling nervous and you are not sure whether it is a bit of fear or a bit of excitement, then just remember, It has all happened before to our ancestors, and they faced daggers and swords and arrows and bullets. Well, they can build Offa's dyke as high as they like, but will simply run over it. Hooray! Hooray! They shouted. It is an absolute privilege stood here now, lads. I get goosebumps all up in my arms. Hooray! They shouted. It's going to be tough out there today, but what are you going to do if you fall down? Get back up! They shouted. What's that? I can't hear you, he said. Get back up! They shouted. Well, there's right, you get back up. You have your Welsh Friars jersey on, with the dragon. Now I'd like you all to get up and get in here for a moment. They all stood up and came in a little tighter, and he went up to the nearest one. You have the dragon on your chest, he said. Can you see the dragon? Yes, he answered. Is it going to roar today, boyo? Yes, he answered, and those behind did the same. Yes! Is it going to breathe fire today? He said. Yes, he answered. So, today, on this English soil, you've got to focus, mind. When you are before that start line and you are looking at these English bastards, you've got to want to kill 'em. Run right over 'em if you have to. When you cross that start line, you've got to become a horrible, nasty bugger. After all, they come into our country, they sit on our beaches, eat our ice creams, and they buy up our cottages for their holiday homes, and they show up for 2 weeks a year, and they complain about the rain and the weather. Yes, they shouted together. So, when you cross that start line, you have to become somebody else. A killer. You understand? Yes, they shouted. Can you all see the dragon? Yes. Can you feel the dragon? Yes, they roared. I want to hear the dragon, he said. Ah! They shouted. I can't hear you! Ah! Ah! Okay, boyos. On the count of 3 now. 3, 2, 1. Men of Harlock, stop your dreaming. Can't you see the spear point gleaming? See the warrior pennant streaming to this battlefield. Men of Harlock, stand ye steady. It cannot be ever said ye, for the battle we're not ready. Welshmen never yield. Aren't those Welsh lads nice? Said Camo. Really nice, said JB. And great singers, said Camo. That land of my fathers. I hope they do that one next. Really makes the hairs stand up on the back of your neck. Really good singers, said JB. Hang on, said Camo. Here comes Yorkshire in 3 coats at last.